watch them chop it up and make you feel the groove. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Hey guys, welcome to our very first guitar lesson. I am going to be showing you the basics of building your first chords and some basic rhythm ideas. Now, please make sure to watch the other videos on music theory because I'm not really going to cover a lot of music theory in this. This is more technique, okay? I'll try to plant some ideas about music theory as they come up naturally, but for the most part, you want to watch those other videos to get your music theory. Okay, so first things first, the strings from the bottom up can be remembered with this mnemonic. Easter bunnies get dizzy at Easter. So we have E, B, G, Easter bunnies get, D for dizzy, right, at Easter. And you're going to notice that the two outside strings both start with an E. Okay, so this is a high E. Even though it's closer to the ground, it's a high E because it sounds high. This is a low E. Even though it's higher from the ground, it sounds low, doesn't it? It's a low E. Okay, our instrument is tuned in fourths for the most part. There's one spot where it's tuned by a major third, okay? So if I go from my low E and I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semitones, which is the distance of a fourth. Kind of like the Here Comes the Bride song, if you think about that. That is the same as if I play my low E open and my low A open. No hands. I can do the same thing on the next string as well, from A to D. Same interval. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semitones to get to that next string. Next string. Same thing. Now, that interval has been the same. E, A is a fourth, A to D is a fourth, D to G is a fourth. But when we get to the third string and the second string, third string from the bottom and the second string from the bottom, that interval is just a major third, okay? So that is 1, 2, 3, 4 to get the second string. Now you might be wondering why that is. And what it does is by doing that, by shifting it by a major third, somewhere along the way, the outside strings end up being the same note. If we didn't have this one string that kind of got goofy and went played by somebody else's rules, our chord shapes would be a lot harder to play. Now, you look at instruments like the violin, and the violin it's tuned in fifths, which is a little bit different, but it's consistent, right? And so shapes and patterns on the violin are always going to be the same no matter where you start, which is kind of cool. For guitar, that's mostly the case. You just have to take into account whenever you have a pattern moving from the fourth string to the third string, it's going to be a little bit different, okay? And then finally, when we get to the second string to the first string, we're back to our normal tuning, which is a perfect fourth. Okay, so now that we've got that covered, the reason I explain that is because a really good basic way to kind of tune your guitar is to take your first finger, or any finger really, but to play at the 5th fret, because that should give you the next note. And it's going to be pretty close, and if you can make micro adjustments, if the second note is a little high, then you can lower it. If it's a little low, then you can raise it. And there's going to be really great videos on how to tune your guitar like this, but you can do that all the way across until you get to the 3rd string. You need to go to the 4th fret to get the major third. And then your pinky here and here. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about tuning is that's how everyone kind of learns how to tune in the beginning. They learn like that, and then they learn by using harmonics, which is a little bit more advanced, but it's easier to hear when things are out of tune that way. But the problem with both of those things is the way that we hear music in modern times doesn't really lend itself well to using your ear to tune a guitar. So the reason is, it used to be that every note had an exact frequency to produce that note. And songs would sound good because they would take, for example, the key of A, and then all of the other notes in the key of A would be spaced perfectly to that A. And what that meant is that a song would sound great in that key, but maybe you go to play the piano instrument in a different key, and it's going to sound wonky because it was really tuned to play in the key of A. Well, somewhere along the way, they were like, you know what? If we take all the notes and just budge them out of tune a hair and kind of make everything more equidistant, then we have the well-tempered music system that we have today, where all the notes are just barely out of tune with each other, and we're gonna sound great in multiple keys. Okay, so that is why I suggest you get a phone app or an actual physical tuner. And this is kind of a robust one. You don't need this one, but I'll put maybe I'll put some links to my favorite tuners, the ones that I think are pretty cool, in the description when I get a chance. So I suggest using a tuner because that's going to get you in your key, your guitar sounding good the quickest, and you're going to pass the test where you play one chord and it sounds great, and then you play another chord and it sounds great. If you've ever tuned your own guitar, you might notice like, oh yeah, when I play this chord, it sounds awesome, but then I go to play this chord and it sounds out of tune. Now this guitar actually sounds pretty good because I just tuned it with a really, really high quality tuner. But that kind of explains why. It's because it might sound better in one key than it sounds in another. Okay, so tuning is out of the way. Now, in terms of playing chords on guitar, I have to tell you something. Everyone's doing it wrong. Everyone is learning wrong. They just do. And the reason is because they learn a shape, they learn a chord, and then they go to play some strum pattern. Let's say it's like... Then they go to change chords, and their left hand doesn't really know how to do this very well. So their fingers are going slow, almost got it, and then they go and play. It's a lot easier for your right hand to develop strum patterns in the beginning than it is for your left hand to make those chord shapes. Most people are right-handed. So this is already not a very good hand for doing things, for making chords. So this hand takes a while to develop. So today I'm going to take you through the very basic chords of music with your left hand. And I'm going to give you my idea of what order you should learn them in. Now this is not necessarily the order in which you're going to see them in music. It's just that I think that this easy chord goes really well to this easy chord. And then not all of them are easy. We're going to get there. And you might have to play this video again to get those chords better than you do today. But here we go. Giddy up. For now, this is the thing that I was saying everyone's doing wrong. They play whatever exercise they're doing too quickly for where their left hand is in its development. Okay, so if you want to practice your right hand at quicker tempos, maybe you're doing an exercise like that's an exercise you're actually going to learn. It's called accents. It's an old drum exercise from drum and bugle corps, marching bands, but it's just applied to guitar. Maybe you're practicing that and your chords aren't like solid yet. So what I suggest you do is mute your strings, because there's no point in playing a chord if you can't play the chord changes in time with your right hand, okay? What you want to do is take your first two chords that you play and then see how long it takes for you to go from one to the next, okay? That's it. Then you're going to take the first chord again, and you're going to do 4 down strums. Lift and play the new chord 4 times, and then go back to the original chord and play a long strum. Okay, so let's go through what this first chord is. I'm gonna pop up a picture of a chord right here. Yep, that's E minor, okay? So you're gonna notice it's kind of a vertical representation. So what it means is if you were to hold your guitar right next to it, right, you're gonna see 6 lines. Those lines represent the strings. The horizontal lines are the frets. And you wanna play in between the frets to the best of your ability. Now, as you go up the neck, which we're not gonna do today, but as you go up the neck, you do want to shift your wrist flatter and put the thumb on the back of your neck and almost like push your hand forward, your knuckles forward, okay? That gives you a much better hand position as you go up the neck. But if we're on our right thigh, we're playing a steel string guitar or like a folk guitar or electric guitar, when you're down at the bottom, you can totally play in what's called cradle position, okay? It's almost like you're shaking hands with your guitar with your left hand, which is totally backwards, but that's the image, okay? So your thumb can be up here. Gosh, John Mayer even uses his thumb to play chords. So you can totally do that. When you do come up, you typically want your thumb to naturally progress to the back of the neck and your knuckles to pull forward, okay? Just be forewarned that's coming. Back to E minor. Okay, so if you're gonna notice on the first string, the one over here, that first vertical line, that is your low sounding E, okay? And then on the next string, we have your second finger on the A string. Then on the next fret, or next string, we have your third finger, or your ring finger of your left hand, on that same second fret. The other 3 strings have 0, 0, 0, right? And so that's saying that those are open. Okay, so when you strum the whole thing, there's basically a couple ways to play this, right? If you have a pick, you don't need a pick, but it's good to, I think it's beneficial to learn how to strum with the pick, how to finger pick with your hand, how to even strum or do strumming techniques with your fingers, right? This is like a kind of a flamenco. You want to learn it all. You can even play basic strum patterns with your right hand. You kind of use the back of your nails to go down and you use the thumbnail to go up, right? You could totally do that. If you have a pick, I suggest for today, you use it. And really the easiest thing to do is imagine you put your hand out to shake, right? See how it's not like, hello, nice to meet you. It's just really relaxed, right? You want a really relaxed wrist and you just kind of put these 2 fingers together and this finger, and this pick just slides in, okay? You want to hold the pick as light as you can without dropping it. Process that. You want to hold the pick as light as you can without dropping it. And you're going to get very good at moving the pick around, okay? In your hand as you need it. Because it will kind of move around, but you're going to get better. Now, some people, like me, play with an open hand. And a lot of that has to do with like posting, or like these are kind of like not the greatest techniques to pick up, right? But there's a lot of great players that play with an open hand. There's also a ton of amazing players that play with a relaxed closed hand. And what's great about a relaxed closed hand is that a down strum is a very natural motion. Boom, super natural. Up, you're going against gravity. This does not feel as natural. And somehow, these fingers, when they're just lightly beneath this first finger, they offer some extra support to that up motion, okay? I would say that I think I have been most impressed by the rhythm and strumming of players that play with a relaxed closed hand. Not closed, not a fist, just relaxed, with the middle finger supporting that first finger. But you're probably going to see me do this a lot just because I've, since the age of 7, that's what I learned. So it would be harder for me to unlearn that. But if you ever wonder why, some of the best people that strum and have the most fluidity in their hand, relaxed closed hand. Okay, so back to our E minor chord. We're going to go down 4 times, and then we're going to switch chords, okay? Now the chord that we're going to switch to is really easy. It's just these 2 fingers going down 1 string, okay? So we're going to play E minor, and then we lift up, move them down towards the ground 1 string, and play. Now there's 2 things that are going to be different about this next chord, okay? 2 things. For number 1, your thumb that we had down here in cradle position is going to lightly make contact with your low sounding E string, okay? And the reason you're barely touching it is you're doing something called muting. And it's really important for guitarists to develop really great left hand muting, okay? We can mute stuff and unwanted notes with our right hand as well, and we totally do that. But what we want to do is get really good at using our left hand to mute things on our, whenever we need it. Like let's say I have a C chord. I'm not even using my thumb. You don't even know this chord probably. But I'm using this finger to play this note and to lightly make contact with my low E string, which I don't want in this chord. And what that means is when I play the whole thing, you never really hear me play that because in the full context it's muted. So technically this sound is in there, but it's been muted. If I didn't mute it, it sounds muddy, right? That's why I want to learn really good left hand muting. Okay, so the first thing I said, when we play our E minor chord and we switch to the new chord, we're going to lift up, move those 2 fingertips down towards the ground, 1 string, okay? Our thumb is now going to lightly make contact with that low E string, okay? And the final thing we're going to do is take our first finger, which has been waiting he's like, put me in, coach, I'm ready. You're going to take that first finger and put it on the 2nd string, 1st fret. So here's a picture of this chord. It's called A minor. Okay? Now when you go back up the other way to E minor, you're going to lift your first finger, unmute your thumb, lift those 2 fingers, your 2nd and 3rd finger, your middle finger and your ring finger, move them up a string to play E minor. Okay? Let's give it a shot. 1. So we're going to start with E minor, and then we're going to switch to A minor. 1, 2, ready, and. Now a couple things I want to point out. Good job. If you were able to keep up, it's probably fast for your first time, right? Remember, you got to do the tempo check. So what you do is you play 1 chord, you see how long it takes to play the other chord, and then that informs you of how quickly you can do this. 3, 4, lift. Now notice from my E minor chord, I lifted when my right hand, my strumming hand, was going up, okay? It happens in that same time. 2, 3, 4, lift, down. You want to hit that 4, lift, back to E minor, okay? Let's give it a shot. Let's try it one more time together. Now, make sure you got a good sounding chord. If you have to pause this at any point, just to practice one spot over and over again, go ahead and do that, okay? 1, 2, ready, E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, lift, A minor. Now we're muting the low E string. 3, back to E minor. Great. So those are your first 2 chords. You have E minor and you have A minor. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something. You're going to learn your next chord, and it's super easy. Your next chord is E, just a regular E, okay? Now the difference between a major and a minor chord is just 1 note. And it gets really confusing because when you have a guitar, you have 6 strings. And most of our chords, we're playing maybe 5 strings at a time or 6 strings. Sometimes we're even doing smaller bits on the guitar. But all of these first basic chords only have 3 notes in them. Okay, so even though we have 6 strings, there's only 3 different letters or letter name notes that we need to play. So for example, the E minor chord has 3 notes in it. I'll just tell you what they are. The root is an E, the third is a G, and the fifth is a B. E, G, and B, right? Now, if I play those notes, E, G, and B, I have a full E minor chord. That's all 3 notes in the E minor triad. But on guitar, we have 6 strings. So we have an opportunity to play those notes more than once with a pretty basic shape. So this is a low E, here's a B, the fifth, here's another E. So far we have a couple E's, a couple roots. Then we have the third, which is G. That third is gonna matter in a moment. Then we have a B, which is our fifth again. E, B, E, G, B, the fifth, and then we have another E. So we have 3 E's in this chord, but it sounds full. It sounds fuller in a way that this doesn't, right? If I just have E, G, B, might be a cool part to a song, but if I'm strumming, I want more, right? And so that's why I have this basic shape. Okay, so the reason I say that, again, is because major chords and minor chords are just 1 note apart. If we have that E, G, and B, that middle note is what's determining whether or not it's major or minor, okay? The bottom note and the top note are a fifth apart in both chords, a major chord or a minor chord. But the middle note determines if it's major or minor. Go to the theory lessons, because you're gonna get way more info on theory from that. The reason I mention it here is because a lot of times on guitar, just changing 1 note by a half step gives us another chord. And that's the case with our E minor, okay? If I take my first finger, boop, 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 boom, and put it on the 3rd string, 1st fret, I now have an E major chord, which is awesome. Just 1 finger and I have a new chord. So what's nice about this is that remember we went from E minor to A minor. Now, if I take the entire A minor shape and move it up, and by up I mean towards the sky, 1 string, each finger I lift up, keep close to the neck, and put them down 1 string higher. I have the exact same shape as an E chord. Now, I don't have to mute that low E string because it's actually the root note of my E major chord. Or we could just call it an E. Okay? So the next step is to now play A minor and E. Lift your chord with your right hand. Lift. Lift. Excellent. So that's your second chord. And if that was too fast for you, pause this, do it in your own tempo, whatever you need to do, okay? So that you have now E minor, you have A minor, and now you have E major. Cool? Okay, let's go to the next chord I want you to learn. The next chord I want you to learn is a C chord. Now this one starts to give people a little bit of trouble. But what you do is you play an A minor chord, which we know, okay? And you're gonna lift just your 3rd finger, okay? Your left hand ring finger, okay? And you're gonna place that finger on the 5th string, 3rd fret. Now you're gonna notice here, I purposefully did not move these fingers at all. Like they didn't budge 1 bit, and I did that on purpose. Because you can go from an A minor chord to a C chord without moving any other finger. But the truth is, when you make that change, your hand does kind of relax into it a little bit. Your left hand, the middle finger actually scoots a little bit higher, still behind that 2nd fret, but it does go just a little bit higher. So look at how my hand is moving. My first finger Doesn't move at all. My thumb is muting both of these chords, the low E string on both of these chords. Okay, so I have A minor. And first, again, you're just gonna practice making those two shapes, A minor. This is not particularly fun, but you're learning a new coordination. Again, even though your middle finger is on the same fret, it does feel like it picks up a little bit and just scoots closer this way for the C chord. Okay, once you've gone back and forth a few times, then you can take it to a rhythm. And you're gonna start off with quarter notes, just down strums. A minor for 4 counts. Okay, and remember when you are going to shift to the C chord, you're gonna lift only the fingers that matter, right? Your first finger doesn't move. Your first finger stays the same. Your second finger is gonna lift a teeny tiny bit and just kind of scooch this way a little bit. And then your third finger like lifts up from where it's at and then it has to go back and tuck behind that middle finger. Okay, so let's try this together. 1, 2, ready, and A minor, C chord, A minor, C chord, and then we're going to end on an A minor, and cool. All right, so that was our C chord. You are rocking and rolling. You now have an E minor chord, you have an A minor chord, you have an E major chord, and we just picked up a C chord. If you are overwhelmed, you should totally stop this video and come back to it again, start over from the beginning, and until you get those chords down, okay? These next few chords, I'm gonna kind of breeze through, and the reason I'm breezing through is A, I want the video to kind of stay reasonably short, but also B, I think you get it now, right? You want to first learn the shape. If there's an X over a string, that means you mute it, okay? And if you're muting it, you can mute it with your thumb, you can mute it with a finger, but you want to mute that string with your left hand if there's an X on it, okay? And you learn that first you just start off going back and forth between the shapes. Just back and forth. Once you can kind of do it at a reasonable tempo, then you're going to want to do 4 strums, and then on the 4th one, lift your hand on the up of 4, 2, 3, 4, lift, play, and you want to land on the string technically like a millisecond before you strum it, right? You're going to get that timing down. Okay, so our next chord. For this next chord, you're going to start on C. Okay, now this one is not as easy. Just be forewarned. Because C, even your starting chord is not as easy. But you're going to go from C to G. Okay, so here's a C chord again. Cool. So you got 4, the 4th finger, or your 3rd finger. Sorry, I've been playing piano all week. You take your 3rd finger, your 2nd finger, and your 1st finger, right, to play that C chord. And you have a couple open strings and you're muting here. Now for this next chord, you're gonna take, you no longer need your 1st finger for this next chord, okay? That doesn't mean it needs to fly away or take off, but it wants to stay kind of relaxed and close to the strings, okay? So go ahead and lift your 1st finger, just see what that feels like, okay? To keep it in close proximity to the strings, like ready for action, but coach isn't putting you in yet, okay? But you're ready. You're like warming up. You're throwing some pitches, okay? So he's close. Your 2nd and your 3rd finger are gonna lift up, not far, really small amount, move up towards the sky 1 string. Okay, so now you have this shape. And you're gonna notice you have another dot over there we gotta take care of, okay? That's gonna be our pinky. This is a chord that people have a hard time with a lot. But I really want you to learn this fingering. Some people play it without their pinky. I want you to play it with your pinky. And the reason is because when you're playing in the key of C, this is a closer shape. Remember, when I say I'm in the key of C, that just means my song starts on C and all the chords that are being played are in the key of C, right? And G is in that key. G is the 5 chord in the key of C, which which we'll cover in the theory lessons. When you're in the key of G, that other shape, either like this without your pinky or like this, is great because there's a whole bunch of chords that fit really well with that. But for now, basic chords, you're going to use your middle finger, your third finger, your ring finger, and your pinky to play the shape. Now I want you to notice something. Look at my pinky, okay? It's hard to show you. Look at my pinky. It's not like, none of my fingers are like this. They're all on their fingertips. That's why I can't have nails on my left hand. And my pinky is on its fingertip. And look at that angle. It's not like, none of my fingers are collapsing. They're all on their fingertips and they're all strong arches. All strong arches, okay? That's my G chord. And you're gonna go back and forth from G, C, G, C. Okay? Then what I want you to do is I want you to take these basic chords and try them with other chords. Okay, so you're gonna do E minor to G. You're gonna go C to E minor. You're gonna go A minor to G to E minor to C. Start to mix them up, okay? We still have a couple more chords to go. All right, the next chord I'm gonna throw up is this A chord, okay? Now some people, this is an interesting chord because people play it a lot of different ways. People will play it like this, with second finger, third finger, pinky, fourth finger. Some people will play 1, 1, 2, 3, which I think is terrible. There are lots of ways to play it. 2, 3, 4 is probably a really beneficial shape to learn because any shape you're going to do down here, we want to be able to move it up the neck, right? So if I'm playing that 2, 3, 4 thing, when we cover bar chords, you're going to be better off that you learn 2, 3, 4 because when we go up the neck, you now have your hand is already conditioned to do it in this way. For me, my teacher taught me this way. And I was 7 years old and this is the way she taught me. So this is the way I learned, is I put my middle finger on the third string, second fret. I put my middle finger, that was my first finger, forgive me. Third string, second fret. All of these fingers are on the same fret, right? I put my middle finger right above that on the fourth string and my ring finger on the second string. And that is how I play the A chord. Now, admittedly, I like playing this particular shape because I like how it slides up into this other thing I'll do sometimes. So that's why I kind of like that shape. But you should learn both. Okay, so what's another way to get to that A chord? Let's say we have A minor. You know that A minor chord. If I just put my pinky down right behind it, I now have A major. Great. Okay, 2 more chords. And then you're done with the basic chords, okay? D and D minor. Okay, so the D chord is, there's no chord that kind of goes into it really easily. I guess the A chord. If you play the A chord like I play it, where you leave your first finger down in the middle, and then your middle finger and your ring finger. If you're using that shape, when you go to play D, your first finger is kind of an anchor. It's in both chords, and so that finger doesn't have to move, and you're just moving your other fingers around behind it, okay? So that can be the way we learn it. Okay, so the D chord, as you see, has your third finger here on the second string, third fret, and your middle finger is on the first string, second fret. And it's very happy sounding, okay? Now, I'm just gonna tell you the notes in a D major chord. Okay, if you listen to the last theory lesson on piano, you might remember that a D major chord has these 3 notes. It has a D, an F sharp, and an A. That gives you a D major chord. If you lower that middle note F sharp down to F natural, then you get a D minor chord, okay? And the thing about this particular chord is that the third of the chord is on the first string. It's the middle finger note. And if I play, and by the way, I want to mute this low E string to play this D chord. The A string, the A note is in the chord, but it's not the root of the chord, okay? It's not the root. And so you can play a D over A, and it's a full sounding D chord. And if you're playing in a band and the bass player's like rocking out with a low D, then sonically, all together, it's gonna sound like a root position D chord. But if you're playing by yourself and your song calls for a D chord, you probably don't want that low A to ring out, okay? So what you do is you're muting the low E string with your thumb, and then as much as you can with your right hand, you're trying to kind of like maybe not hit that low A string. I can even mute the A string with my thumb. It's a little unnatural, but for the most part, I'm just like, I'm aiming for the higher sounding strings or the treble strings on the guitar. That's kind of how I get that D chord to sound just like, you know, like it's floating, okay? But if you hit that A, it's not the end of the world. It's actually in the chord, okay? Like I was saying, the third of this chord is on the first string. If I lower that first string one semitone, I get what's called a D minor chord. Now our fingers have to change just a little bit to hit this change. What I have to do is I have to take my first finger, lift it up, because I need to repurpose my first finger to play the first string first fret. And then my middle finger goes up and covers where the first finger was. And that's how I turn a D major chord into D minor. Really cool, pretty progression by, well, a lot of people. The Beatles had this progression. There was a band in my hometown. The band was called Flying Blind, name drop. And they had a song that started on a 4 chord, and then it went to a minor 4 chord, and then it went to a 1 chord. I don't remember what key theirs was in, but you could do that to learn these 3 chords. It sounds cool. It's also a Beatles tune. But here we go. So if we have D, 3, 4, shift, you can leave your third finger there, and then go to like an A major chord. And you can do it with just downs. We haven't even covered strum patterns yet. D major, D minor, A major. That is all of your basic chords, okay? Now, in our next lesson, we're going to be taking those chords and applying different rhythms to it, right? So you're going to learn how to do that, and we're going to play with those basic chords, okay? Also, in a future lesson, we're going to cover the fact that all of these shapes, anything you do down here on the guitar, can get moved up, okay? And sometimes you just take snippets of what you played on here and move it up. But for example, if I play an E minor chord and I move it up, I now have like a little E minor shape here. It's easy to remember for guitar because they're the same shapes. So you learn these basic chords, you're actually unlocking a whole lot of potential up the neck, okay? So even though this doesn't seem like we covered a lot of information today, it's like the basis for everything. Those shapes you're gonna see as long as you're playing guitar. You're gonna be going for a solo, and you're gonna be imagining some of those shapes that you just learned today while you solo to know what notes to play, right? It's kind of cool. So I'm proud of you, good job. We kept this lesson just at 40 minutes, okay? But really, if you're pausing and stuff, this should take as long as it needs to take. And if If you ever need to come back to this lesson, just as a refresher, please do. But the second you feel like you got it, you're ready for the next lesson. So hopefully I'll have it produced by then. See you guys soon. Bye.